Okay, now that we've talked about our stance and our fundamentals, we're going to go through some of the basic steps and then basic combinations of steps that you'll be able to work on. So, from your guard, remember, shoulder width apart, left foot forward if you're right-handed, vice versa if you're left-handed, heel aligned with your back toe, and upper body canted so that you're ready to fire, knees bent. So from here, the first step is our gather step. So a gather step is where we push our weight from the back foot and we gather forward. The gather, of course, comes from our front foot extending and the back foot gathering in. So we can gather forward as we have, we can gather back. You can gather in pretty much any direction. So for example, if I wanted to travel to the right, I can gather right, gathering left, and then finally we can gather onto the diagonals. As we spoke about in the fundamental video, you want to go front foot forward first, so of course a gather to the left forward diagonal sees us gathering nicely, same with the back right. But if we want to gather on the opposite diagonals, we're going to be doing what we call a passing step, where we pass so that our front foot has now changed. Right, so I can also, the feet have swapped, so I can gather back, and from the guard I was in, I can pass back to my left. So you can see that you can travel in pretty much any direction with your gather step or your passing step. So as we just discussed, our passing step is where we take our feet and we swap them. So we can pass forward, we can pass back. Now, passing steps, it's important to note one important thing, which is your body is cocked and ready to fire. It's very tempting as you bring that back foot forward to allow your hip and shoulder to follow that forward and drift. We don't want that, especially if you're not throwing at the time. You want to ensure that you're still cocked and loaded to fire if you're not intending on firing, which means keeping that hip and shoulder back as you transition your back foot forward. So this is where you can find your sword foot forward stance. As we were saying before, you can either fight shield forward or sword forward. That upper body position stays the same. You still want to be ready to fire at any point. Now this means that as we pass forward, you're going to want to maintain that upper body carriage even though you're moving and swapping your foot position. So essentially it's just moving from your shield foot forward stance into a sword foot forward stance. You can look at it as that. It's also the most efficient way to travel, as our normal walking gait sees us swapping our feet over regularly. So that is our passing step. Finally, we have a pivot step, which is essentially where we plant our weight over one of our feet and we shift our weight around that point, sort of like that's the central point of the compass.
90 degrees.
So you can do it over your front foot, you can go pivot forward or pivot back. You can do it over one foot or the other, forward or back. You can also pivot off the back foot, back or forward, back or forward. So those are your three basic steps. So I wanted to touch on a couple of footwork combination steps that are going to be of benefit to you practicing them now, because they come up quite a lot when you start sparring. So the first thing I want to talk about are offline steps. So we did talk about our gathers being able to go offline in any direction. However, I want to talk to you about actually being able to move offline in reference to your opponent. So I put this center line down so you can see that this is the center line of the fight. We're going to be getting off of that. The buckler that you can see in the foreground is going to act as my opponent for now. So our offline step is going to be a combination of a passing step and then a diagonal gather. So I can do that swapping feet over, pass forward, gather on the diagonal. So I've gotten off of my opponent's center line. Now, to make that a little bit more efficient, what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to add a pivot step at the very end so that I actually get a little further around and I'm facing my opponent neatly. So I'm going to pass, gather on the diagonal, and pivot. And again, in the opposite. Pass, gather, pivot. And then the last combination style step I'm going to talk to you about is simply being able to pass forward and pass backward, maintaining that upper power ready stance. So that means we're trying to actually keep our hip and shoulder and core primed to fire. We're not allowing our upper carriage to follow that back foot step, because once we've let our hip drift forward, we've already fired the shot. It's the same movement when we fire the shot, so it means that if I haven't, I've spent that power. So I want to be able to maintain my upper carriage as I pass through. So just practicing passing forward and back, maintaining that weight over the ball of the foot, and also having a central line to watch to make sure that your feet are maintaining that hip width distance apart and not going too linear is going to be really useful. I actually suggest doing this in front of a mirror just to make sure that you're keeping your knees bent, that you're gliding nicely, and you can see that you're keeping your feet on either side of that line. And just practicing this is going to be a huge help to you later when you start fighting. Lastly, you can move forward and backward slowly. Occasionally there'll be times that you want to get back faster. So if you're wanting to move back a little bit quicker, the last combination we're going to talk about is actually moving backwards with a little bit extra acceleration. What I'm going to get you to do is, from your basic stance, push your weight back into your butt like you're sitting on a stool, and then glide backwards on the balls of the foot as we have been. Right? So you're still maintaining your upper carriage, but you're pushing back so that you're getting a little bit of extra speed. Make sure that you don't run into anything when you practice it. So I hope those were all helpful. Keep practicing, and we'll see you soon once we're all out of isolation.